Hello everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am the Sipping Tea, and today I'm going to be reviewing the MBT 70 Cold War Era 3 Heavy Premium Tank. Before I get into that, however, I just want to say thank you ever so much to everyone who has subscribed so far. At the moment, the channel is up to 122 subscribers, which is absolutely brilliant given the relatively short time this channel has been going. If you aren't subscribed already, then I'd urge you to do so now, purely because last week I did have a channel event for reaching 100 subscribers, and you could only be eligible to win those prizes if you were subscribed. So if you subscribe now, then you will be eligible for future events such as that. So, with all that being said, let's get into it. So the MBT 70 has recently had some buffs, mostly looking at the penetration of the gun. But yeah, it's something that was a bit needed, I would say, for this particular tank. But before going into the gun statistics, let's take a look at the battle earn rates for this tank. So the silver earn rate will give you an additional 55%. The tank XP earn rate is an additional 20%. And the crew XP earn rate is an additional 10%. So all things being said and done, I would say this tank is reasonably good at earning silver thanks to that 55% additional boost just there. Moving on to the gun statistics. So the main standard rounds are 400mm, the premium rounds are 430mm, and the missiles are 450mm. When it comes to the damage, the MBT 70 really does pack a really powerful punch if you do manage to pen the enemy. So both the standard rounds and also the premium rounds offer an alpha of 780 damage, which is a huge amount of damage. And the missiles will do an alpha of 1100 damage, which again is pretty decent. The rate of fire of the main gun is 5.71 rounds per minute, of course assuming that there are no influencing factors regarding equipment, crew skills and consumables. And the reload time is just 10.5 seconds, which isn't too bad at all, given the amount of damage that the gun is capable of. It doesn't actually list the reload time of the missile, but I do know it to be around about 15 seconds. But obviously your mileage may vary depending on what equipment, consumables and crew skills you have on your tank. The aim time is just 2.5 seconds, which I suppose isn't too bad. But thankfully that doesn't really, or it doesn't affect missiles at all. The accuracy is 0.3, which isn't really that great, to be honest. It is a massive cannon on this tank at 152mm. So, you know, that tends to lend itself to not being particularly good when it comes to accuracy and aiming. So either take your time aiming or, well, get in at close range. The gun depression is 9 degrees, which isn't too bad at all, and the gun elevation is 20 degrees, which again, yeah, isn't too bad. Not the greatest, but you know, that's still pretty respectable. The maximum speed of this tank is 64 kilometers an hour. Now, with this tank, fun fact is that it can go as fast backwards as it can forwards. So the top reverse speed is also 64 kilometers an hour. So if you need to get out of a nasty situation pretty quickly, then being able to reverse at that kind of speed is no doubt going to be extremely beneficial. The engine, it has a 15% fire chance, so that is awfully high. So definitely I would be recommending to you to carry a fire extinguisher, and possibly even consider the appropriate commander skills as well to try and minimize the chance of this tank catching fire, because otherwise you could well find yourself in a bit of a bad situation. That being said, however, you can see here in the game footage that I have opted to go for the hull patch kit instead of a fire extinguisher. Really, I've just tried to go ahead and experiment with different options. In the earlier days of owning this tank, I did use a fire extinguisher, but I found that the hull patch kit does actually yield a better overall result, being able to repair your tank. Instead, I've gone for the commander skills to reduce the likelihood of the tank catching fire. Of course, whenever I am set on fire in this tank, which is a little bit more frequent than, say, your average tank, I do curse myself for not having the fire extinguisher. But I think you need to be your own judge of that, really, as to whether or not you have a fire extinguisher or something else in place. But yeah, I think I may well end up going back to the fire extinguisher, given how often this tank does seem to catch fire. The main sort of drawback in terms of mobility for this tank is the fact that it doesn't really turn very well. It's very much like an Abrams tank, both roughly by the way it looks, but also in handling. So it's not the sort of tank that will do any sort of quick turns without the assistance of a handbrake at least. So do keep that in mind when you're trying to chase down enemies, or indeed run away from them if that's the situation you find yourself in. In terms of the steel concealment, it's 0.1, which on paper seems good, but you know, it's a really big tank, so realistically I would say that the camouflage factor of this tank is not really going to be anything to shout about, though it may well be worth having a look to see if you could go for a camouflage build on this one, but I wouldn't really hold your breath in that regard, to be perfectly honest with you. That being said, I've not attempted it just because I assumed the tank was really just going to be too big to really have any meaningful concealment, but you know, you could always give it a try if you feel like being sneaky. Finally, the vision range is 525 meters with a signal range of 590 meters. So yeah, not too bad, all things being said and done, when it comes to the concealment of this tank and the vision range. The equipment that I would recommend for this tank would be the advanced loader, the gun stabilizer, and I would also actually recommend the spore liner as opposed to vents. The reason for that is because the armor on this tank is pretty soft. It is a tank that can very easily be penned by, well, just about anything really, but particularly enemy missiles. So the spore liner, I feel that does help. For anything that may wish to throw anything at you of a high explosive nature. So in terms of whether or not you should get the MBT 70, well, that really is going to be a matter of how much does it cost. This tank did go on sale as a quote-unquote personal offer a couple of months or so ago. So this tank at half price would cost about 7,000 gold, which isn't too bad at all. That's a good price, I would say. The full price for this tank is a whopping 14,000 gold, and I know it's Error 3, but I'm sorry to say that I don't think it is worth that kind of money. It's somewhat of a famine or feast tank, I feel, because of the quite low penetration of the gun in the Error. Bearing in mind that some tanks will have penetration of around 700 millimeters using premium rounds in this Error, 400 or 430 millimeters of pen really just it doesn't really cut it. I'm sorry to say. It's a tank that needs to be able to shoot at the sides or very specific areas of enemy tanks in order to reliably get the damage in, and unfortunately, due to the fact that the gun and aim time, just the accuracy is not there, the aim time is too long, and as stated earlier, the mobility really just isn't very good. All of those factors sort of combine to really mean that one of the main ways that you may wish to play this tank, which would be to sort of maneuver into a position where you're able to shoot the vulnerable parts of enemy tanks, it's not really capable of doing that. Of course, you can find yourself in that situation, but I think it's more likely to be that the enemies put themselves in a bad position, as opposed to you managing to put yourself in a good position, with somewhat rare exception, perhaps. That is just, of course, my opinion on this. I am by no means a good player in this game, and certainly in far more capable hands, then this tank can unleash some enormous damage. The fact that it has 3,600 points of HP also means that it has a relatively good survival rate, but again, of course, you've got other tanks in the era, other heavy tanks that are more closer to the 4,000 HP mark, so it is by comparison a little bit lacking there as well. So really, I would say, in summary, the MBT 70 can be quite a fun tank to play, but it probably isn't going to be the very best tank in your arsenal of Era 3 heavies. So that is it for the review of the MBT 70. I do hope you enjoyed it. I've got a few links down below in the description. That is, of course, going to be to my Twitch channel. We're up to 18 followers now on Twitch, so please do go ahead and follow me on there. There's also a Patreon link as well, so if you fancy giving me a little bit of financial support to help me continuously make these videos, I do 3 videos a week. They take an awful lot of time, and it seems an awful lot of very expensive equipment to make them. So if you fancy giving just a little bit of financial support, even if it's only say $1 or $2 a month, it all helps, it all adds up. So go ahead and click the Patreon link if you are in a position where you can lend some assistance in that regard. That would be most appreciated. Thank you ever so much to Tragic Nemesis, of course, for your ongoing support to me with Patreon. And finally, I do have a Twitter account, so please feel free to, if you use Twitter or have a Twitter account, then follow me on Twitter. I tend to announce everything on Twitter, from videos going live to prize draw winners, that sort of thing. So if you have an account with Twitter, then please do follow me on there. Of course, that's completely free to do so, just like it is to subscribe to me here on YouTube, which again, if you're not already, please do hit the subscribe and notification button, just so you know when I've uploaded a video here on YouTube. Finally, I'd like to invite you to just leave a comment below of your opinion on this tank review. It's ever so slightly different from usual. I've sort of put a little bit more of my own personal opinion into this at the end of the review on this one. Yeah, I've sort of missed out other key things like the crew skills and that sort of thing, but yeah, just leave your opinions below in the comments section, be it good, bad or otherwise. I appreciate all of them, and I do either reply or otherwise interact with them to show that I have actually seen them. So with all that being said, thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.